Alex stood at the threshold of the living room, gripping his briefcase tightly, his eyes locked on the scene unfolding before him. The soft amber light from the lamp bathed his wife, Sophia, as she stood near the window, talking to Maxwell. The two of them, though silent, communicated volumes through their expressions and eyes. With just a fleeting glance, Alex could feel the tension between them, something unsaid, but undeniable. He didn't realize it, but he was standing at the precipice of a truth he had long avoided. He couldn't believe what he was witnessing. They smiled at each other, light and casual, but there was something wrong about it. It wasn't the playful camaraderie he had always seen between them. It was different. Sophia was looking at Maxwell with the same eyes she had once reserved for him, but now those eyes weren't filled with love and adoration. They were filled with something else, curiosity, secrecy, maybe even defiance. Alex's steps wavered, as if his legs weren't sure whether they could carry him any farther. A growing unease spread within him, but he couldn't understand why. Was he overreacting? Was he letting his doubts cloud his judgment? But no, something was happening. Something bigger was about to unfold, and he knew it, deep down. Sophia's soft laugh broke the silence. But this time, it wasn't just between her and Maxwell. Alex could feel the space between them growing thicker, heavier. He closed his eyes and inhaled deeply. If he didn't do something now, everything would change forever. He couldn't let this ambiguity consume him. He couldn't let these unspoken emotions drown him. Just then, Sophia turned, their eyes meeting. Her face registered a fleeting look of surprise, but it was hurried, as if she was trying to conceal something she couldn't hide. Maxwell rose from his seat and walked towards Alex with a smile, one that Alex couldn't bear to see. "Hey, Alex. You're back." Maxwell's voice was calm, confident, almost arrogantly so. Alex stood frozen for a moment, his response caught in his throat. He studied Maxwell from head to toe, sensing the unspoken challenge in the air between them. He didn't know why, but deep inside, he understood that his life would never be the same again. Sophia remained standing, slightly turning her face, avoiding his gaze. Alex felt a sharp, overwhelming jolt in his chest, his heart seemed to stop for just a moment. Everything around him seemed to slow down, as if time itself had paused. He couldn't believe what was happening. A simple, gut-wrenching question echoed in his mind: does she still love me? Maxwell exchanged a look with Sophia, his gaze full of understanding, then turned to Alex with a smile that bore no trace of guilt. "Everything's fine, right?" Maxwell's voice carried an undercurrent of something unspoken, something that Alex couldn't ignore. The storm was coming, and Alex could feel it gathering, ready to tear his life apart. His heart couldn't grasp the truth. The image of Sophia, his beloved wife, seemed to be slipping away with every word, every gesture she made toward Maxwell. Everything he had built with her, all the love and trust, was crumbling, falling apart right before his eyes. A numbing sense of disbelief hit him like a sudden blow, robbing him of his breath. His thoughts spiraled into a haze of suffocating despair. The only thing clear in his mind was this: I have to know the truth. No matter the cost. "Sophia," he said, his voice hollow, not quite his own, as if part of him had already left, "what is going on?" Sophia didn't respond immediately, her eyes flickered away, unable to meet his. Alex didn't need to wait long. Just one glance from her, and he knew. In that instant, everything shattered within him. He sank into the armchair by the window, the soft glow of the evening light spilling over him like a veil of warmth. But there was no comfort in it. His eyes were fixed on a photo on the table, the photo of him and Sophia from a summer vacation, back when everything was perfect, filled with hope. That was before the pain, the doubts, the unraveling of everything they had. He could still remember the day they met, back when she was just a bright, eager girl in college. Her eyes had sparkled with passion and confidence, and Alex had fallen for her instantly. She was the light in his otherwise dull world. They became inseparable, sharing dreams and secrets late into the night. They talked about a future together, a family with children, a house filled with laughter. Simple dreams, but filled with so much hope. After graduation, they married. Sophia was the woman Alex trusted would walk beside him for the rest of his life. Their early years together were perfect, traveling, cozy nights, and unforgettable moments in the home they built together. Alex worked hard, devoted to his family, and Sophia was the perfect wife, supporting him in everything, whether big or small. Everything seemed perfect, nothing could break their happiness. But slowly, things began to change as they settled into real life. Alex remembered the first time he noticed a shift in Sophia. It was a weekend evening when she declined to go out with him, saying, "Go ahead, I need to catch up on work." At first, Alex thought it was just an isolated incident, but soon, it became routine. The weekends they could have spent together were now spent with her working. They still shared smiles and conversations, but Alex could feel a gap forming between them, one that grew larger with each passing day. The distance between them only deepened as Sophia became more involved in her work. Alex didn't question her at first, thinking it was just the pressures of her job. But as the weeks passed, he started noticing the late nights, the meetings that ran longer, the way she would avoid his gaze or dismiss his attempts at affection. Something was off, and he couldn't ignore it anymore. Then came the fateful discovery, the moment that shattered everything. One evening, as he walked into their home, he noticed Sophia's phone on the kitchen counter. The screen lit up with a new message. His hand, almost without thinking, reached for the phone. The text from Maxwell was simple, but devastating. "Can't wait for this weekend, it'll be ours." Alex froze. His stomach twisted. He wasn't imagining things. The truth was right there in front of him, staring him in the face. Sophia returned from the bathroom, oblivious to the storm that had just erupted in Alex's mind. She sensed something was wrong as soon as she saw him standing there, the phone in his hand, his face pale. "Are you okay?" she asked, her voice soft, but Alex couldn't answer. How could he? His trust was gone, and all that was left was a hollow ache. "Sophia," he finally said, his voice low and thick with emotion, "what's going on?" Sophia's gaze dropped, and Alex could see the guilt in her eyes. She opened her mouth to speak, but the words wouldn't come. What was there to say? What could she say when everything had already been laid bare? Alex, in that moment, realized there was nothing left to salvage. All the love, the promises, the dreams, they were gone. Sophia had already chosen her path, and Alex had no place on it anymore. His heart was broken, but his resolve had never been clearer. He wasn't going to let this destroy him. He wouldn't let her or Maxwell take everything from him. He was done. It was time to rebuild, to take back control of his life. And it started now. The feeling had become more and more undeniable as Sophia began to immerse herself deeper into the social events at work, especially with the company where she worked. Alex couldn't help but notice the long conversations she had with her colleagues, particularly with Maxwell Carter, which always seemed to extend beyond office hours. Maxwell was confident, powerful, and had a charm that drew everyone in. Though Alex never witnessed anything directly, he couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. Late nights, secretive phone calls, and occasionally, dinners that stretched late into the night, all made him begin to doubt. Still, Alex tried to push the unease away. He loved her, and he wanted to believe that it was all just his imagination running wild. "It's probably just work," he told himself, trying to comfort his troubled mind. But when they attended company parties, he couldn't ignore the closeness between Maxwell and Sophia. They laughed and conversed as if the world around them didn't exist, as though it were just the two of them. Sometimes, Alex would catch Sophia's gaze lingering on Maxwell, and it wasn't the look of a wife gazing at her husband. No, it was the look of a woman mesmerized by someone else. One evening, after a long and exhausting day at work, Alex accidentally stumbled upon something he could never forget. On the desk, among scattered papers, was a calendar with a red-marked day. That day was marked for a dinner between Maxwell and Sophia. It was the first time Alex felt the sharp sting of betrayal. His eyes stayed fixed on the calendar, and it felt as if everything in his mind stopped, everything he had built, everything he had trusted, was crumbling, and he hadn't even realized it. He tried to reassure himself, but his doubts began to grow uncontrollably, gnawing at him relentlessly. Thoughts of Sophia's loyalty haunted him. How could he continue living in a relationship where trust had been shattered like this? He felt an emptiness, as though nothing in his life held any value anymore. His wife, the woman he had loved and trusted, had now become someone he no longer understood. When he found the text messages between Sophia and Maxwell, the sweet words, the flirtations that she had never shared with him, Alex lost all sense of composure. Each message felt like a slap in the face. It was then that he realized, all along, he had been deceived. His marriage, the place he had once considered his safe haven, was now tainted by betrayal. Alex couldn't understand what was happening. Though he had seen the signs, facing the truth head-on still left him reeling. He recalled the first time he sensed the change in his relationship with Sophia. It was during those days when she started coming home later, sometimes after unannounced business trips, or meetings with colleagues that she never mentioned to him. Soon enough, Alex's suspicions were no longer just fleeting thoughts. She no longer came home with the same bright smile or long conversations they used to share. Instead, there was silence, a coldness that he couldn't explain. Dinner alone, nights spent apart in separate rooms, it all made Alex feel a profound loneliness that he had never experienced before. Every time he tried to reach out to her, to find some form of connection, he was met with a shake of the head, with vague responses that left him feeling more distant than ever. But perhaps the turning point, the moment he could no longer pretend that everything was fine, came on one particular evening when he discovered the texts on Sophia's phone. He hadn't meant to snoop, but fate pushed him into an irreversible situation. Sophia's phone lay on the table while she took a shower, and the screen lit up with a new notification. Alex couldn't resist. His hands reached for the phone almost instinctively, just to glance at the message that had come through from Maxwell. The text was brief, but enough to make his heart stop for a moment. "I can't wait any longer. This weekend will be ours. Have you made up your mind?" His face drained of color as he realized this was no ordinary message from a colleague. This was a message from a man who was courting, tempting, and seducing the wife he had given his heart to. He didn't know how long he stood there, holding the cold phone, but one thing was clear, his life would never be the same again. When Sophia emerged from the bathroom, Alex could not hide the strange look in his eyes. He stared at her, and without a word, his eyes conveyed all the pain and disappointment he could no longer keep hidden. She sensed the change immediately. "Are you okay?" Sophia asked, her voice soft but laced with concern. That question, innocent as it seemed, did nothing to soothe the agony in Alex's heart. He didn't answer right away. Instead, he picked up the phone and quietly placed it in front of her. Sophia looked at the screen, her face visibly changing color. She quickly grabbed the phone, but Alex was faster, holding it back. "Did you really think I wouldn't know?" His voice was not angry, but it carried enough weight to make Sophia feel guilty. "Did you really think I wouldn't find out?" he continued, each word striking her like a thunderclap. Sophia froze, her eyes flickering between the screen and Alex's piercing gaze. An overwhelming silence filled the room, and Alex could feel the tremble in her body. "Alex. I'm sorry," Sophia said, her voice faltering. But no matter what she said, Alex couldn't feel any relief. Her apologies were too late. She couldn't just apologize after letting someone else fill the space he never even realized existed. "It's all too clear now, Sophia," Alex replied, his voice tinged with sorrow. "You've gone too far." He turned away, unable to face her for another second. Everything he had once known about his beloved wife was now nothing more than a pile of ruins, lies that could never be erased. He knew that nothing could salvage this relationship. Sophia watched him leave, her eyes hollow, as if a part of her had shattered. She wanted to say something, but the words wouldn't come. She looked down at the phone in her hand, then up at Alex, who was walking out of the room, seemingly unable to bear this any longer. She had lost him. She had lost everything. And Maxwell? Was he truly the one she had been searching for? Or was this all just an escape from reality? Alex stepped outside, into the darkness, the light from the living room window casting a faint glow in the distance. He didn't know where he was going, or what he was doing. But in that moment, he just wanted to run away from it all, to escape the pain that Sophia had caused him. He wanted to prove that he could live without her, that he didn't need her love anymore. But at that moment, he realized one thing: he couldn't. He loved her, but she had betrayed him in a way that he could never forgive. From that moment on, Alex's life was no longer the perfect one he had once known. The anger burned inside Alex like an uncontrollable fire. He couldn't understand how this had happened. The woman he had loved with all his heart, the one he trusted completely, was now the one who was deceiving him right before his eyes. The feeling of betrayal was indescribable, like a sharp thorn pierced through his chest, suffocating him. He paced back and forth in the living room, trying to control himself, but he couldn't. Everything inside him was about to explode. He needed to do something, anything, to release this anger. Sophia stood there, watching him from a distance, too afraid to come closer. She knew she had gone too far, but she couldn't say anything, couldn't justify herself anymore. In her eyes, Alex was no longer the husband she once loved. She had hurt him too much, and now she didn't know what to do. Tears of helplessness fell down her face, but they couldn't erase what had happened. "I can explain," Sophia spoke weakly, her voice trembling. "I know I was wrong, but I couldn't live a lie anymore." But her words didn't reach Alex. He shook his head, his gaze filled with pain and disappointment. The feeling of being lied to was something he could not accept. He looked into her eyes, but all he saw now was emptiness. "You know, Sophia," Alex began, his voice cold, "I gave you everything. I gave my whole life to you. I loved you blindly, trusting you without any doubts. And this is what you give me in return." He stopped, unable to say anything more. His words felt hollow, as if they no longer carried any weight. It felt like he was falling into an endless abyss, unable to escape. Sophia felt suffocated. She stepped closer to him, her hands trembling, but she didn't dare touch him. "You can't forgive me?" she asked, her eyes full of hope, but Alex only looked at her with dry eyes. "No, you can't ask me to forgive you," he replied, his voice cutting through her heart like a knife. "You're not the person you once were, and I'm no longer the person you loved. It's over." Alex turned away and walked out of the house that had once been his home, where they had shared beautiful memories and promised to be together forever. But now, nothing was left. He walked out, with no destination, no goal. He just needed to get away, to escape this painful truth. As he stepped outside, his phone buzzed. Alex saw Maxwell's name on the screen. He knew he couldn't avoid this confrontation anymore. He had been unable to stand still when he had seen that scene earlier, but now he knew he had to face Maxwell, the man he once considered a friend, but who now turned out to be the most treacherous one of all. Maxwell was not an easy man to beat. He was always confident, believing he could conquer anything he desired. But Alex was ready to face him. The call ended with Maxwell's cold challenge, but it didn't scare Alex. He was tired of the lies. He wouldn't let Maxwell get away with it. When Alex stepped into Maxwell's office, the air between them was so thick with tension, it felt like it could be sliced. Maxwell leaned back in his chair, his eyes no longer filled with smug satisfaction, but with caution. He knew Alex wasn't here just to chat. "Alex," Maxwell said, his voice steady but guarded, "I'm assuming you didn't come here for a friendly chat." Alex stared at Maxwell, his face devoid of a smile, his lips silent. "We need to talk," he said, his voice rough and strained. Maxwell rose from his seat, trying to remain composed, but Alex noticed a flicker of nervousness in his eyes. "I don't know what you think," Maxwell replied, his voice shaky. "You don't really think I'm stealing your wife, do you?" "Don't pretend like nothing has happened," Alex interrupted sharply, his gaze unwavering. "I know everything. And I won't let you two continue hurting me." Maxwell scoffed, but the laugh was hollow, forced. "So what, Alex? What can you do? We both know this can't be stopped. She's chosen me." "That's right," Alex replied, his voice now filled with unshakable resolve. "And I'm going to take back what I've lost." Maxwell hadn't expected Alex to be this firm. He couldn't have imagined that a man who had once loved his wife so blindly would now stand in front of him with such strength. "You can't keep her," Maxwell challenged. "She's mine." Alex stepped forward, his eyes locking onto Maxwell's with a steady gaze. "I don't need her anymore. But you'll pay for this. You can't just walk away from this." It was the breaking point, the moment everything Alex had cherished shattered into a million pieces. A part of him still wanted to salvage things, but the other part was more resolute than ever, not allowing the betrayer to slip away without consequences. Both men stood there, staring at each other with eyes full of defiance, but it was clear only one of them would walk out of this confrontation unscathed. And Alex knew that, no matter the pain, he would be the one to walk away without regret. When Alex left Maxwell's office, the tension in the air faded. The challenge had ended, but Alex knew the confrontation wasn't over. Maxwell would have to face the consequences of his actions, whether he wanted to or not. And Sophia. She had gone, chosen her path, one that Alex couldn't follow. But not yet. Alex wasn't ready to face the pain of it all just yet. He wandered through the city alone that day, feeling every breath, as though it was a battle he could not win. He passed familiar streets, the ones where he once held Sophia's hand, shared laughter. But now, all that was left was emptiness. Everything he once knew about his life had changed in a single moment. When he returned home, everything was quiet, just as it always had been. But for Alex, nothing was normal anymore. He walked into the room, where everything was aged, where the memories of a loving family had once lived, but now they were distant, fading. She wasn't here anymore. That feeling, the one he couldn't put into words, haunted him. But then Alex understood something: he couldn't live in the past forever. In the dim light of the evening, Alex made a decision. He would take back everything he had lost. He would no longer live in the shadow of betrayal, no longer allow the past to bind him. He had lost his wife, but he still had Emma, his daughter. She was the only reason he had to stand up, no matter how deep the pain ran. The next morning, Alex met with Samantha, his lawyer. She had been with him through every step of the legal battle, but now he needed to make something clear. Alex wanted to ensure that his daughter would have a bright future, and of course, he wouldn't let Maxwell or anyone take away his right to raise her. "Alex, I understand that this isn't an easy decision," Samantha said as they sat across from each other. "But I'll do everything in my power to ensure you get custody of Emma." Alex nodded silently. No more words were needed, his eyes already spoke of the determination inside him. He was no longer the man who cowered to betrayal. He was a father, a man who had overcome the greatest pain of his life. A week later, they filed for divorce. Despite the lack of any defense from Sophia, Alex couldn't find any peace in it. She didn't show up in court, her silence was a slap in his face. But he didn't need her anymore. His life would go on. After completing the legal proceedings, Alex sold the old house and bought a new one, a fresh start for him and Emma. This house would be where they would rebuild their lives. The walls wouldn't hold memories of pain, they would hold memories of hope, new beginnings, and sweet moments. In the months that followed, Alex began to find himself again. He returned to work, not for money or status, but to feel alive again, to no longer be haunted by memories of a love that had died. He focused on his family, on his daughter. Each morning, he drove Emma to school, and each night, they had dinner together, talking about everything from her school lessons to her dreams for the future. A year passed, and a miracle began to unfold. Emma gradually regained the innocence of a child, no longer burdened by the tensions in their home. Alex realized that he was no longer drowning in pain. In fact, life was beginning to open up before him, with new opportunities, new hopes. Then, one autumn afternoon, while Alex was walking Emma home, he met Nina Martinez, a woman he had encountered during the legal process. She was another lawyer, working at the office with Samantha. At first, their interactions were strictly professional, but over time, they became closer. Nina had her own past scars, wounds that had yet to heal, but she had found peace in meaningful connections. Nina looked into Alex's eyes, and there was something in her gaze that made him feel sincerity, something real. She didn't look at him as a man who had been through a painful divorce, but as someone worthy of respect, a man strong enough to endure everything. They talked, laughed, and then one day, Alex realized that he was starting to develop feelings for her. It wasn't like what he had with Sophia, but it was a new beginning. They started dating, slowly, not rushing into anything. Alex understood that love couldn't be rushed, it was a long journey, with steady steps. He was no longer looking for perfection, he was looking for a genuine connection, a relationship that could help him and Emma rebuild what had been lost. And so, Alex's life began again, from the broken pieces, from the losses. But he didn't let the pain dominate him forever. He had overcome the hurt of betrayal, and in the end, he realized that the most important thing wasn't the past, but how he lived in the present and looked toward the future.